Welcome back. Today we are adding LED lights to a cave to make glowing crystals. So in case you haven't watched the other videos, I'm in the process of making a whole room into a cave because I'm an escape room designer and it's part of our Tiki Lounge game. So I've made other videos of how to make the rocks and concrete over, but as I was making it, I felt that it needed a little bit of magic, and I started doing some experiments to figure out how to make glowing crystals. It took a little bit of trial and error, but I finally came down with something that works. So this is how we do it. We start with RGB LED lights. So that way we can actually change the color of the lights throughout the game. And then when I did my concrete, I left spaces without any concrete bare so I can easily put the lights in. I also painted it black because when we add the crystals, they're see-through, and if you keep the raw wood like up here, you actually can see through and it doesn't look so good. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to take these LED lights and I'm going to hot glue them in place to the shape of the crystals that I want. So let's check it out. I have my trusty wireless glue gun, which I love. Got the LED lights. So first step, I'm taking off the backing of the LEDs. So I did a lot of testing, and to make these crystals not show the individual LEDs, you have a couple options. One is to get LEDs that are very tightly packed, where the lights are close together. These are not, it's what we had in stock. So you have to diffuse the light. For us, we couldn't get enough distance between the LEDs and the crystals, so we had to come up with another idea, and what we came up with is we actually are going to light the crystals from the side. So I'm going to put these on, and then the lights are going to shine sideways into the crystals that we slightly elevate above the lights. So I'm taking the backing off because I can't use the peel and stick, unfortunately. I'm going to get my hot glue and we're going to glue it on. Be really careful, this is a high temperature one and it's super hot. Oh, it's kind of getting me. My fingers are used to this by now, but if you haven't worked with hot glue, it kind of hurts and you lose a few layers of your fingers sometimes. I'm doing a really organic looking flow of this, so no straight lines. I'm only doing a few sections at once so I can really get it in good. And this stuff, the LEDs we have, it's very stubborn. It has a coating, and you can't do too many changes in direction or else it's going to really fight you on it. So I'm going to do all of this. I'm only going to do one-sided. I tried both ways, coating it on both sides and one side with LEDs, and I actually found that as long as your crystals aren't too wide, you can just do one-sided and save a whole part of LED, which is a really nice cost-saving option. So I'm going to put it all on. I'm going to chop it at this area, and then we will reinforce it and do the next step. So this is where I cut. You'll see usually like an icon of scissors so that we can reuse this. You're recording! Okay, now it's time for the caulk. I'm using clear silicone caulking, and the purpose of this is to raise up the background a little bit and to give an area for the light to diffuse through before it hits the crystals. And so I'm just going to pipe this in. Oh, I forgot to put the little hole inside. Let's fix this. Don't forget to do this because otherwise it's not coming out. Who knew? Okay, so now the caulk is actually coming out. And it's cold here in Quebec right now, so if your caulk is not coming out well, you can put it outside in the sun to warm up a little bit. There's also some tips on YouTube that I found really helpful, like using clamps to help pull this, but I'm not going to do it today because I'm just showing how to do this. So I'm going to use muscle instead. Actually, muscle wasn't enough. I will show you this tip because it is cold and it's not coming out. So you take a clamp, you put it on your handle for your caulking gun, and you just squeeze it, and it makes it come out much more quickly. So how I put it on doesn't really matter because I'm going to put crystals over it. What's really important is that it covers the light because I'm going to put concrete on top of the crystals, so it has to cover the light. or else the concrete will cover it and we won't get any light. And then the other thing is it just has to be raised enough, up enough for the crystals to go on. And it's crystal making time. So what I did is I took a crystal I had at home. I used some mold making putty that I molded around the crystal to make a mold. I made several different ones, so I have variety in my crystal cave. And now what I'm gonna do is pour resin into it to make a crystal so that I don't have to pay for hundreds of crystals to go into the cave. So my resin tutorial is going to be super fast, but there's a ton of resources online that are better than mine. But basically, you're going to pour out equal parts of part A and part B, and then mix them until they're completely mixed together. And you can see it when you look at it, you'll know when it's mixed. I'm done stirring. It has lots of bubbles because I'm not good at mixing resin. So I'm going to put this in a cup of warm, hot water, and the bubbles will actually all go out, and then I'll be ready to pour. One small side note is I'm not wearing proper ventilation, and that's because I'm talking during the video, but I always use a respirator when I work with resin, and so should you. Ooh, and it's ready. Oops. Our crystals are unmolded. I've made a lot of them. You only saw one. And now it's time to do the second round of caulking, which means I'm going to put it on the back of this and adhere it to the caulk that I already added to the wall. So I put a lot of caulking on the back. I made a lot so it can goosh around the edges and really seal this in. And now it's time to apply. So making sure the caulk goes around the crystal. In escape rooms, players are notorious for just getting into everything and ruining things. So I want to make this as human-proof as possible, meaning really get it in. And then when I put the concrete's also going to go around the crystals, so it's really hard to get them out. There's nothing that says, maybe I should try these out to the players. So I'm going to keep going. The most important part is that it's really on there good and that it's also above the light source, so the light goes to illuminate it.
To hook up power to our LED strips, instead of doing our wiring and soldering ourselves, we bought these little snap-on wires that just go slide on the edge of the LED strip, and on the other side there are little holes so I can just plug in my wires to the power and we're done. Done.
The silicone is dry. I've got my concrete mixed. So I'm going to first spray the mixture of Buddy Rhodes ramp and water. It helps the concrete adhere to new concrete and wood and the different things. I'm going to spray it just so that it doesn't show to all my crystals. Just want it slightly damp. The instructions say to let it dry, but I actually find it's better when it's just a little damp on the walls. Now the fun part, we get this vertical concrete mix. I love it because it's super easy to work with. I'm not an expert concrete person, so I'm going to get little bits of it in my hand. I roll it so it has a nice edge, then I push it up against my crystals. And because it's kind of like a lava rock cage, I want it to be pretty organic looking. And then I'm going to slowly use my fingers and gently blend it into the existing rock. So this can be shaped further when it dries, so I get it in a general shape that I want. I'm looking out for fingerprints and things, getting it how I generally want. I can always come back and carve later. So I'm going to keep going, and we're going to do the whole thing. On the side that has the LED lights, I'm really looking to not cover the light too much. As I said before, I put the silicone up so it covered the light because we didn't want the concrete to actually go in and just block out the light source. So I'm going in around, pushing it in, making sure I don't cover too much because I went through all the effort of making all these rocks. And it's really kind of like meditative to just go and blend everything in. And then once all these are in, I'll go and I'll add a little bit of rock texture so it looks a little more realistic. You can use a rock, you can use sculpting tools, you can use basically anything you want to give texture to the rocks. And these are our glowing crystals. I'm super happy with how they turned out. As I said earlier, we use RGB LEDs, so this gives us the ability to change the colors. So they're red right now, we can make them white, we can make them green, we can make them pulse because Justine can program these cool things. But you can make it as simple as you want, but it's pretty cool. It gives a lot of ambient light and a little bit of magic into our tiki rock cave. So thanks for watching. Hope you get to try it out. See you next time. Oh, did you see that? The light went out.
Yeah.
All right.